All right. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. Today we are here to discuss the summer work travel program. My name is Nick. These are my colleagues Sharon and Anya, and we will be coordinating, along with some of our colleagues in the consular section, the summer work travel program here at Embassy Kyiv this summer. Every year we work with students from all over the country who are interested in spending a summer in the U.S., learning about our culture, experiencing daily life in different parts of the country, and meeting new people. Now, last year we processed about 6,000 applicants for summer work travel from Ukraine. And over the past 5 years, out of the over 100 countries that participate in the program, over 2 million students have done this. In that same time period, that includes about 40,000 summer work travel visas that we've issued to Ukrainian students. Some important dates for you to know are that our interviews will begin on February 22nd this year. And you can schedule your interview starting 2 weeks before the day that you hope to interview. So in this case, that means the very first day to start scheduling will be February 8th. And these interviews will go through the end of May. We encourage everyone to schedule the interview as early as possible in order to make sure that you don't miss your opportunity to have an interview and participate in the program. As last year, we're happy to announce that the program dates for Ukraine have been extended to include the busy Labor Day holiday season. So the full dates of the program that Ukrainian students are eligible to participate will be May 9th through September 9th. Now, we'd like to underline that you must finish your school and start your school when it starts. So just because the program dates are May 9th and September 9th doesn't mean that you should leave school early or come back to school late. You can find more instructions on the specific program and the requirements on our embassy webpage and our Facebook Summer Work Travel Ukraine site. So we're going to open the airwaves up to questions from all of you that are watching today, but we're just going to go first over some of the procedures and application processes. So first and foremost, this web chat is intended for students that are studying at Ukrainian universities that are interested in participating in the program. If you, the students, have any questions, you can contact us directly through our embassy website and the Facebook page that I just mentioned. And as always, we, the employees at the consular section at the embassy, are your best source for accurate information. For those of us that are joining us, or for those of you that are joining us from agencies that are facilitating the procedures, we ask you only to transmit the information that we shared today accurately with your students. Another reminder for the students is please remember not to purchase your plane tickets until you have gotten your visa. And if at any point you feel that you are being defrauded or taken advantage of, please let us know. You can find the contact information, again, on our websites. More information to point out is that the only people that are eligible to participate in the program are students that are studying at a full-time accredited university that is accredited, that is to say, by the Ukrainian government. If you are in a distance language program or if you are in a part-time program, unfortunately you don't meet the minimum qualifications and you won't be able to apply and take part in the program. Additionally, according to program rules, the accreditation as it applies to students that are studying at universities in Crimea that you consult the Ministry of Education. It's also important for us to point out from the start that during we've observed that high numbers of Ukrainians in the last few years have stayed in the United States instead of returning to Ukraine and to their universities after participating in summer work travel. Due to this fact, we do have to take this into account when deciding who receives a visa and who doesn't this year. We hope that those intending to participate in the program see it as a unique opportunity to improve language skills, learn about the United States, and make themselves more marketable when they return to Ukraine. With that out of the way, we will move on to the questions that are coming in online and go from there.
And actually, we do have one question already, Nick.
Okay.
It's from Pet. Is asking, he's saying that they have a student from Zimbabwe, and do we have any special regulations for the student? Could you explain?
Okay, this is a good question, and it's one that we hear from many students who are from outside of Ukraine. So in the case of Pete, if he or his student is from Zimbabwe, the first regulation that we're looking at is the student studying here in Ukraine? If he's studying at a university that is accredited by the Ukrainian government, then yes, he meets the requirements. We have, as I mentioned, many students from countries all over the world that are studying here in Ukraine. Last year, we had students from 15 different countries that participated in the program.
Okay. And here's a question from Yulia. Is it true that fourth-year studying students have less chances to get the visa than the others? What are the reasons? Do you have any chances to participate in summer work and travels if I'm on my fourth year of study?
Absolutely. When a student comes into the program, the officer has to evaluate every student individually. So we look at every student individually. We don't look at them as a group. So if you're a fourth-year student coming in, you qualify for the program as long as you're going to a university that is accredited by the Ukrainian government, full-time student. You do qualify. But we have to look at your ties to Ukraine. So we're always going to look at your English ability. We're going to look at your ties to Ukraine. You can participate. Doesn't guarantee that you'll be accepted, but you can participate.
Requirements of Wunderkind. So starting in February?
As
long as you're a student.
Yeah. You
So-
can visa procedure or required document. So the next question is from Victor. I am a Summer Work and Travel 2015 participant. I have decided not to take part in Summer Work and Travel this year and instead finish the 5th year of my university. The program lasts for 1.5 years. What are my chances to get a visa after I finish my 5th year?
Well,
Do you want me to answer this one?
sure.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So this is a student who's already participated and is in his 4th year and going to finish a 5th year. And I'm assuming this means there's going to be another year, another half a year after that.
Year and a half.
So again, it's very similar to the question before about the 4th-year student is we really have to look at every student individually. However, again, this is a cultural program. So this is a chance for you to go and experience the culture of the United States. And if you've already participated once, participating again might be a little bit more difficult because we want to give everyone a chance to actually go and participate in this program. So you still have the opportunity, you can still apply, you're still qualified, but you have to consider what are you getting out of this program if you've already participated once before.
Right. And we did have students from the 5th year and even from the 6th year last year that participated. So again, as long as you're enrolled in a Ukrainian accredited institution, or university rather, you're eligible for the program. So good luck, Vitya, with your studies.
So, Yulia, hello. If the DS 2019 form and the job offer are from May 20th, 2016, how many days earlier the student can come to the U.S.?
Okay, for this one, it goes back to some information that I mentioned in the introduction. The first date that Ukrainians are eligible to begin work under the program is May 9th. So if the job offer is from May 20th, that's when they would start to work. And with the J1 visa, as other student visas, you can't enter more than a month before you start. So you would finish your program at the beginning of May or whenever that finishes, and then after the 9th, but not before, before the 20th, but not before May 9th, you would be able to come to the U.S.
Do we want to maybe point out the insurance, that you have insurance for the period of your
Right.
visa? If you decide to come early or decide to stay for that grace period afterwards, you have to make sure you have supplemental insurance so that you are covered in case something happens.
Yes. So, and the questions from Natalia. We have a lot of Natalias
We do
today.
have a lot of
Yeah.
Natalias.
What a surprise.
Oh, we have a lot of Natalias in Ukraine.
Fair enough. Good afternoon. My question is whether there is a big chance that I will get denied a visa if I'm a first-time Summer Work and Travel participant, and it will be my first time abroad in general.
There's no requirement that you have traveled abroad before. In fact, a lot of the students that we see this trip to participate in summer work travel is their first trip outside of Ukraine.
Most of our students from last year were first-time outside of Ukraine students. Absolutely.
Right. And first-time participants are one of the larger groups of applicants.
So while we're waiting for the next question, maybe Sharon or Nick, you're gonna share with us your experience for summer jobs. Did you do something
What did you
during
do,
your
Nick?
summers?
I was remembering before this, I did 2 or 3 things. 2 years I worked midnight shifts in the emergency room at the hospital
Wow.
in my town. So not something that summer work travel participants would be doing, but other than that, I also worked 1 year at a golf course, so that's very
Could be
similar
a summer travel job.
to what they did. What about you?
I did the same thing. I did the same thing each year when I was in college. I actually was a manager at a Baskin-Robbins, so at an ice cream parlor. Very common summer travel type of job. A lovely job, especially if you like to eat ice cream.
What about you, Anya?
Oh, I haven't had the summer job, but I did start working from, I guess, this 3rd year of my studies in the university. So, yeah.
All right, well, looks like we got another question here.
Yep. Vitaly asks, can the 4th-year student take part in the summer work and travel program if he had already been to America twice?
Yeah, there's no limit on how many times people can do it. I don't know if he means when he says he's been to America twice, if he did summer work travel before twice, or if he's just visited America for other reasons, but there are no numerical limits. We had, I think the most that someone last year had participated in the program was 3 times, but as Sharon mentioned, the vast majority of people were students
time.
going for the first time.
So, again, we don't have questions, but maybe you could speak a little about the agencies through which the applicants can apply for the program?
Sure. As far as sometimes people will ask us which agency they should go through, and there's really no specific answer for that. The only thing is that we recommend that they apply with agencies that have been approved by a U.S. sponsor. Currently, there are 35 agencies all over Ukraine, and the list of approved agencies, like a lot of the information that I'm referencing, is available on our website. So if you have questions about those, you can look there, you can see what agencies are closest to you no matter where you are in Ukraine, and then go with one of those 35.
And we got a question from Dmitry. Hello, can I have troubles with getting J1 visa if I am a participant of DV lottery? Thank you.
Okay, so again, we've had questions like this before.
Yeah.
So the concern is the DV lottery is an immigration program and you're concerned about getting a non-immigrant visa. We know that in Ukraine, lots and lots of people participate in the DV program. It's just kind of, it's there so you do it. And we also know that there's a lot of Ukrainians who are entered in the program who haven't actually entered themselves. And we're aware of that problem. So we actually don't pay a lot of attention to somebody's DV lottery entry when we're looking at the chance of getting a non-immigrant visa. So I wouldn't really worry about that too much.
Okay. So, and again about agencies. Can agency book group appointments for their participant? Is this option available this year?
The simple answer to that is no. We don't do group appointments. You'll have to do them individually. You might end up coming in on a day where some of your friends or classmates are, but as far as scheduling them together, it's just a matter of you going online, seeing what dates and times are available, and then taking what works best for you.
Yes, so, and we have, Maxim wrote us, you mentioned that lots of UA students overstayed in United States after the, Ukrainian students, sorry, overstayed in US after the end of the program. Does it mean that we should expect higher numbers of those who do not receive visas this season? Sure.
It does mean that we will look more carefully at every student that comes in. One of the things we have to do is we have to evaluate your ties to Ukraine and whether or not you're likely, you as an individual are likely to return to Ukraine to finish your studies at the end of the program. So it does mean that we will look much more carefully at students this year than we did last year.
But again, we're looking at each applicant as that applicant and not as a group of people. For example, in 2014, many students stayed in the United States, but last year the refusal rates were actually some of the lowest that they've been in history since the program started. So there is no clear connection to the two.
But it's also very important to us that the purpose of this program is met. The purpose of the program is to give Ukrainian students a chance to experience U.S. culture, to improve their English, and then return to Ukraine to finish their studies and really give back to Ukraine, give back to their country. And that's actually very important to us, that you return to give back to your country.
Right. And it sets you up in a unique position in that a lot of students come back from the program with drastically improved English skills that sets them apart in the job market. Here at the embassy and in our contacts with people all over Ukraine, we run into a lot of former summer work travel participants who say, you know, summer work travel was one of the best things that I ever did. It definitely gave me a competitive edge. So those people that are coming back, they're able to translate that into a lot more opportunities. And there are even other opportunities for different J programs.
Absolutely.
Once they've come back.
Yeah.
And we do see a lot of former SWT participants in those US-sponsored programs. Good question, though.
And we get another question. Hello. Last year, 2 of my friends were refused a visa. The reasons are not clear. Can you tell me why do you deny a visa? What are the reasons for the denial?
Again, all of these are on an individual basis. So without knowing the specific cases of your 2 friends, I can't speak to their individual cases. I can say that one of the main reasons that we see for visa refusals is a very low level of English. And when we're saying low, what we mean is that through our interview, the officer has determined that the applicant's level of English is not high enough to allow them to perform at the levels expected of them by their employer, which would subsequently make difficulties not only for them, but the people that they're working with, clients and others. This is one of the primary reasons.
And can I just add, it's not just your ability to perform at the job, it's also your ability to keep yourself safe in the United States, your
Right.
ability to get help from authorities. If there's something that goes wrong and you need an ambulance, you need to explain to a doctor what's wrong with you, we want to make sure that you are absolutely safe in the United States. So it's important that your English is good enough to be able to do that.
And we have Wilberforce pamphlet for that too.
And
Yes.
be sure you have read that Wilberforce pamphlet before you come to the interview, because we will ask you questions about it. We want to make sure that you know how to keep yourself safe.
And we wish that people didn't have to reference the material, but we travel around Ukraine talking to people at universities. Some of you out there might have met us in the past couple of months. Whenever we go, there's always a former summer work travel participant that says, you know, I'm really glad that I had this Wilberforce pamphlet because my employer told me that he didn't have to pay me or that they could deport me. And these are things that those employers are doing wrong. So it's important to have that level of English, to understand your rights as a worker in the United States, to protect your own interest and your safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking about employers, here's a good question from Ala. Hello. Is there any blacklist of American employers? I got a job offer from my sponsor, but I cannot find enough info on the internet about this employer. Nick, Sharon?
There's not a blacklist of employers, but we try the U.S. government that's running this program, the agencies running the program, try really, really hard to make sure that the employers that we are sending Ukrainian students to, employers we're sending any summer travel student to, are honest employers who are not going to take advantage of students. So we work very hard, and if there's an employer who doesn't live up to the standards that we have, then we are not going to send students to that employer. But we don't really have a blacklist
Right.
of employers.
But on the other side, if you find yourself in a situation that you get your J-1 visa, you go to America to participate in your program, and you do have problems with these employers, you should be sharing that information with us, in some cases relevant law enforcement agencies, to make sure that these people don't receive other summer work travel participants in the future.
This is absolutely true. And Michaela says, hello, are there any special procedures for me if I'm Ukrainian, but I'm currently studying in Poland for a master's degree?
There are no specific procedures just because you're not studying in Poland. In fact, some of us were discussing this very thing the other day, and I think last year most of the Ukrainian students that were studying in Poland actually did their interviews at the consulates in Warsaw and Krakow, since they're there, since the officers there know more about those schools than we would know here.
They're not attending a Ukrainian government accredited school.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. And there is a question we got. Do I need to pay visa fee again and fill in another DS-160 form if I get a yellow letter after the interview?
Right, so the yellow letter that some of you will get is not a refusal, it's not an approval, it's kind of a pause on the process. What it means simply is that either we need for you to provide us with additional information, but there's nothing left for you to pay. You've already paid your fee. All you have to do is comply with the request that we make for you to provide additional information, or simply to be patient and wait until we've processed everything, at which point we would return your passport with the visa to you through whatever address you put when you filled out your application.
And if you need to send us a document, you can do it either via TMM courier service, but it's way easier to just scan the document and upload it into your own profile. It will take like a couple of minutes.
Right. And in situations like that, we can often resolve the issue the same day that we would give you the letter.
Yes. And Vova says, hello. Will the students be told the results of the interview right away or sometime after?
It's a review program. The only time it might take some time, we need a little bit more time to finish making the decision. So almost always you know right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. Again, part of overcoming the intent to immigrate question is what your ties are to Ukraine. So if your parents live in Ireland, that might not negatively affect you, but we would be looking at your personal ties, at what compels you to return to Ukraine after you finish the program.
Okay. And Emmanuel, hello once more. How long does it take for the visa to be processed?
We're actually pretty quick. It's usually just a couple of days for the visa to be processed, and then it's sent to you via the courier service.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But then again, still do not buy that plane ticket until
no.
after you've received the decision that you've received the visa. You want to be a little bit careful there.
Until you have your passport back with the visa inside it,
then you can
don't
buy your plane ticket.
Yep. Karina, may the first-year student have his visa interview without passing his summer session at the university yet? Is it important?
So when we're looking at first-year students, the main requirement is that that student has finished at least one semester of school. So in this case, if the student was planning to do some kind of summer session that in the fall, they wouldn't be able to qualify and they wouldn't be able to skip the summer session that they're planning on attending.
Hello, everybody. Why is the percent of visas denied for people from 18 to 25 so high now?
Well, first of all, I don't know that the percentage of visas denied for people from 18 to 25 is so high.
Right.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know where those numbers come from. But again, if you're talking about summer work travel, we have to look at two things. We have to look at your English ability. And usually, you're a little bit older, you have a little bit more time to study English, you might have a better English ability. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at English ability. And then we also have to look at your ties to Ukraine. And young people have weaker ties because they're less likely to be married, they're less likely to have kids, they're less likely to have jobs. We have to look at all of those ties to Ukraine. And so it is a little bit harder often for people who are younger to show those ties.
Mm-hmm. And we got a question. What should I do if I get fired?
If
From
you
your
get,
summer travel job?
Yeah, just
it
fired.
happens. Sometimes things don't work out, but unless it's something really, really bad, it does happen while you're there.
February 22nd date, you have to
2 weeks.
always 2 weeks ahead.
Yeah. English. Any other reason? Do you have any other reasons to deny an application?
A very uncommon reason that we've seen that people were denied is we had seen people who had done the program once before, and while they were in the United States, they were arrested or they broke the law.
Doesn't happen very often.
It happens
but it does
very,
sometimes happen.
very rarely, but that was one that came to mind that we were talking about early today. If you come in to apply to do the program again and we see that you broke the law and had problems with law enforcement, you're probably not going to get another visa because you've shown an inability to comply with our legal system.
Oleg, okay, hello. Is it possible to get J1 visa if my parents have applied for green card lottery a few years ago?
Is this the diversity visa lottery again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, yes, we're looking at every student individually, we're looking at your situation individually, and we're looking at you as a student versus your parents. We know lots and lots of people in Ukraine apply for the DV lottery. We know, again, lots of people don't apply, but they have been entered in the lottery. So again, we're going to look at you individually. We're going to look at you as your ties to the university in Ukraine. We're going to look at your ties, your personal ties to Ukraine. We're going to look at your English. We're going to look at how well we feel that you're going to comply with the program rules and return to Ukraine.
And here's a question from Ala. Thank you for your answers. I have another question. Is it okay to work for an American employer who has office in one address and they will send me to work on different locations every day?
If that's part of the job, then yes. Something that comes to mind when I hear this question is somebody that might be working in some kind of food delivery or maybe some catering service where they have a central office location, but the job takes them to different places.
And that's a good question because it is very important for us that you fill out the employer address in your DS-160 as it is in your DS-2019. So I guess in DS-2019 that would be the main office. So please make sure to put that address in your DS-160
Well, that's a
form.
good point. We had neglected to mention earlier, and one thing that Anya really wants to stress is that be really careful filling out your application. Make sure that all the information is correct because you don't want to make any mistakes.
Usually get at the
Level of English, the expect to look at it in terms of three questions. Just
Your ability to speak English to make sure you're going to be safe in the United States.
we have a lot of people interested in green card
cards.
lottery. So
well,
we
that's
got
something that we get when we
Yeah.
travel around a lot too.
We have one more question about green card. Do you check who is taking part in getting green card or just asking this during the interview?
So we don't actively check, but because our systems for immigrant and non-immigrant visas are linked together, when you come to the window and we scan your application, we will see if you have participated or if your parents participated on your behalf in the past. Normally, as Sharon mentioned, that's just something that people enter. It's something that could have been years ago. But we would see, for example, if you've entered this year, it would show, that you had just filed an application, and that would be something that the officer would probably ask you about in order to see how you overcome the intent to immigrate while you have an open immigrant application.
And I think we can set your mind at rest a little bit. During our regular interviews, just regular tourist interviews, regular NIV interviews, we see lots and lots of people who have DV lottery entries. And the majority of them would get their non-immigrant visas as long as they qualify in other ways. So we see that a lot of times.
Right.
And we got a very interesting question from Ruslan. Do you give any special treatment to students who found their employers themselves? Nick, Sharon?
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You can find your own employer. Your agent and sponsor can help you find the employer. It doesn't really matter to us. As long as you have an employer that's going to be a qualified employer and somebody that's going to be a safe place to work.
And in 99% of the cases, the students are going through the agencies. So it's very rare that we see people that have found their own employers.
And Natalia, can the applicant bring some additional documents at the interview to show their ties to Ukraine? What could it be? I think Nick wants to answer this one, right? This is his favorite.
I can't think of any additional items that someone could bring to show their ties. I think they're both kind of joking with me because this is something that I talk a lot about when we travel to the universities. People bring a lot of unnecessary documents. You should really only have about this many documents when you come to the interview, and those are all laid out in the application process. We do have a lot of people that bring us photographs of their friends and their family, and those are nice. It's nice to see those, but it doesn't. So ID and your grade book along with the 2019 and the other documents that are from us, from the application. You should not bring your cell phone or other electronic devices. In the past, we've had a place to store these at the consular section, but now that is changing and we no longer have anywhere to store these. So you would run into the problem of finding somewhere outside the embassy to store your phone, which we don't advise.
Yeah.
So as difficult as it might be to not check Facebook or Twitter or things for the time that you're standing in line outside the embassy, we just ask you to leave those at home or at your hotel or wherever you might be before you come into your interview, because there won't be a place for you to leave them here.
Yes. Oh, and Emmanuel again. Thank you for your answers. Do you applicants need to show a bank statement as a requirement for their visa?
As Nick just said, no. We have specific documents we want to see. You can bring us. You can bring whatever you want, but people sometimes get a little bit disappointed. Sometimes they'll bring a fat stack of documents, and we won't even look at them because that's not important to us. We have what we need to see. We're happy for you.
Yes. And when
interview, you should look at a calendar, go back 2 weeks to that date, and that's the first day that you can apply for that. So if you want to get that February 22nd slot, that would be on February 8th.
yes,
Now, if they could apply on February 8th for a March slot, though.
Right.
yes, as long as two weeks.
So 2 weeks is the minimum you apply.
Yes. If I get refused a visa, can I apply again?
Yes, you can. You can apply again, but again, remember that you're paying another $160. You're using your time again, and if you were refused the first time, it's because the officer very carefully looked at your situation, looked at your documents, evaluated your English, and decided that you just didn't qualify for the program. So we sometimes say this is not a lottery. Getting a visa is not a lottery. The next office you come to is probably going to reach the same conclusion as the first officer because we're all using the same information. We have the same standards. You can apply again, but we really encourage you to let somebody else use that interview slot.
Right. And for example, if Sharon interviewed someone and they were refused the visa and that person came back and came to my window, I would still see that Sharon interviewed that person. I would see Sharon's notes and her questions. And unless that student could provide information that wasn't available at the time to me, it's very unlikely that that decision is going to change. And also, as we mentioned earlier, there are going to be a limited spot or number of spots because of the great number of interest in applying for the program. So if you've been refused a visa, we ask you're allowed to reapply, but you might be taking a spot away from somebody else who has not had the chance to interview yet.
We have about 40% more applicants this year than last year, don't we? Yes.
Hello. Do I have a right to apply for some work and travel program if I'm a postgraduate student? Sharon?
Yes, you do. As long as you're, a credible student, you're a full-time student, you're in a classroom, you're not taking online courses, you're actually in a classroom student at a university accredited by the government of Ukraine, then you can apply. You are qualified.
Yes. And an interesting question is, what is the role of U.S. sponsor during the summer work and travel program?
What should they do?
So the U.S. sponsor is working from a different side, and we're not seeing that from where we are. So they are working with the employers, finding those jobs that are then sent from the sponsor to the agencies. So we're not working directly with the sponsors, and none of the students from this side in Ukraine would be having any contact with the sponsors until they were in the U.S. and maybe had some issue that caused them to need to avail themselves to that sponsor. Like we mentioned earlier, in the case of a student getting fired or not having a job, that's sometime when you would have contact with the sponsor. But at this point, they're the ones that are pooling the jobs together in order to provide that information, not just to agencies in Ukraine, but around the world in countries that are participating in the program.
And we got another question from Emmanuel. With regards to ties, aside from academics and jobs, what other visible ties can be seen for a foreign applicant? So, just the ties. What do you look at?
So I think you're talking about somebody who's not a Ukrainian but applying from Ukraine. Well, again, we'll also look at ties not just to Ukraine, but ties to your own country. We want to know whether you're likely to just try to stay in the U.S. or whether you're likely to come back and finish your studies and then return to your own country as well.
Yes. And
I should say we did have a number of students who were studying in Ukraine from other countries who did qualify for the program and went to the U.S. and returned to Ukraine to finish their studies. So we're always very happy to see that.
I have finished my studies in college and have entered university. It counts as my third-year course, but in fact, it's my first year in the university. Can I apply? What are my chances? Okay,
this is actually a very good question that we were talking about an hour ago in our office when we were doing kind of a briefing for new officers and participants about the Ukrainian educational system. Students that are in university do qualify for this. It's students that are in colleges and institutes and technical programs that would not. In this student's case, they do transfer in to a university as a third-year student. So what's important is that the change has been made and the student is now considered a university student. So the same would apply to this student as anyone else studying in university. If you have completed or will have completed one semester as a university student and you're studying at a university that is accredited by the Ministry of Education here in Ukraine, absolutely yes, you can apply. As far as right.
Nick, can students from Donetsk or
the ATO accredited, then yes, you're eligible to apply.
accredited by the Ukrainian government?
Like we mentioned earlier, if you go
You need to provide the documents for the embassy both in Ukrainian and English or only English language?
Since all of us here that are doing the interviews speak Ukrainian and Russian, we know what the book lists look like. We don't ask you to go out and get those translated. That would just double the length of the interviews and the time that it takes, and we wouldn't be able to interview as many people. So if you have your student ID and your grade book, bring those in Ukrainian. We can read them. We know what's in them. We don't need them translated to English. Your interview will be in English because, just like this web chat is in English, because it is a requirement of this program in order for you to perform your duties and to protect your personal safety while you're there.
And it's our way of testing your English ability.
Right.
And here is a question from Diana. My brother studies in a university in the United States.
Advisor to the U.S. and what you're applying for this visa, particularly if your brother is lawfully studying at the University of the United States.
Right.
That shows that he has followed the rules, the immigration rules we have.
Right. It's not a disqualification.
Yeah.
If we see that your brother studies in the U.S., we don't automatically say, no, you don't qualify for the program. We will note that as a data point, but other than that, we're interested in talking to you and hearing about your ties, your studies, and checking your level of English.
And I guess this question comes from the agency representative. Alexander asked, what should the agency do if after a student got his J1 visa, they found out that the student's main goal was not to participate in some work and travel, but just to get to the United States?
What is the agency's role?
Oh, this is an interesting question
Yes.
that I haven't seen before. In the event that the student had not yet left to participate on summer work travel, and there was really concrete evidence that the student defrauded the officer in order to gain entry to the U.S. and not participate in the program, we would ask that agency, I would think.
The U.S. for
Return before your school start on September 9th. So start on September 1st, you have to be back in Ukraine by September 1st. So if you want travel time and your classes start on September 9th, you have to stop working earlier. So
Right,
you have the
and that's
travel
why
time.
I said no a second ago, because the only way to do that is, like Sharon just said, is to stop your work.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people are not interested in doing that, but that's the only way that you can meet the requirements of the program, meet the requirements that your university has, and stay in lawful status, which violation of the terms of trying to get a visa.
United States. And her grandparents also live there. Can she get a visa?
So this is kind of similar to the question that we had a second ago about the brother studying in the United States. Again, having relatives in the U.S. does not disqualify you from participating in the program. We are going to look at your ties in Ukraine versus the ties in the United States. In a case like this, if someone's uncle is in the U.S., the grandparents are in the U.S., we might say that it looks like they have a lot of ties to the U.S. If it went on beyond that, if it was my uncle and my grandparents and, well, my parents and my brother and my sister all live in the U.S., it might be very difficult for that person to prove that their ties are stronger to Ukraine. But as far as being an immediate disqualifier, having relatives in the U.S. Is not that.
Many Ukrainians have relatives in the United States.
Many.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
We have
that's-
seen that
Yeah,
one.
same question.
Yeah. Nick, can you tell us what can summer work and travel participants do to ensure their own safety while being in the United States?
The best thing that we would all recommend is to read fully and familiarize yourself with the pamphlets on the Wilberforce documents that we give you so that you know your rights as a worker, so that you know what can be required of you from your boss, what can be expected in terms of pay, and if an emergency happens, you're able to take care of yourself. You would need to on there.
So,
As Nick said, there's a very limited amount of materials that you can actually bring into the embassy with you. No phones, no electronics. I think you can bring a very small bag, but you're very limited what you can bring in. You need to bring your passport, you need to bring your student ID, you need to bring your documents, and you need to bring your grade book. So what's going to happen is you're going to come in, you're going to pass the guard, you're going to get a number, and you're going to go around and you're going to go through intake. Somebody's going to collect your information. They're going to take your fingerprints, so 10 fingerprints, and then you're going to sit down and wait, and the officer's going to call you up. So you'll hear a number called. And I think now we have it on the screen as well, so it's pretty easy to tell when you're being called up for an interview. You're going to come up to one of the windows. An officer is going to greet you in English, and you're going to reply in English, and the officer is going to start asking you questions. Your English ability, we're trying to judge. You're going to get the blue paper, and then what's going to happen?
In the majority of these cases, that's the end of the interview on the spot, and you should get visas with no problem.
When their situation has changed.
Exactly.
Yes. Not a day later, maybe a year later, maybe a couple of years later. When your situation has changed and you have stronger ties.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right, and none of us like to refuse visas. Like Sharon said, it's fun to watch you guys get excited and jump up and down and high five and everything, and we want to see that. So know that we're not out to get anybody. We're not looking to refuse people, but we are there to enforce our immigration laws and make sure that everyone is complying correctly with the program.
and we actually got one more question from Bogdan. I have injured my ring finger. I guess it's an index, right?
Yes.
It is cured already, but I have a scar. Will it affect the finger scanning procedure?
No, we have a lot of people that have scars on their fingers.
Missing fingers.
Missing fingers. And a scar on one finger doesn't affect the fingers on the rest of your hand. So I wouldn't worry about it.
And even if you have a current injury, sometimes what that means is you might have to come back and do another fingerprint when it's better. But yeah, that's fine. That won't keep you from getting a visa.
Yes. So yeah, looks like that was our last question, right? Okay. Or no,
I guess
we
so.
have
there
one
one
more.
more?
Yeah, from Alexander. Is it possible to come to the United States earlier than May 9th to see another cities, sites?
Not on the J1 for this year's program. If, like many applicants we see come to the window and they already have a B1, B2 tourist visa in their passport, they're more than welcome to go and visit and travel per the terms of that tourist visa. But the J1 is prescribed for a certain period of dates, and it is what allows you to work that tourist visa does not allow you to do.
Anya, do they have to then come back in to get their J1?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it is very important on which visa do you enter the United States.
So you could
yeah.
go over to Canada and you can come back in through Canada.
Yes.
Or Mexico.
Or
Mexico. Whatever.
Mexico's nice.
Just enter
Yeah.
on a
Because
on a-
what you're doing is you're kind of starting your J1 period. So if you come on that tourist visa, you then have to leave and come back in on the J1
and
visa.
besides you need yours.
On a tourist right to work, which would be a problem, and say I'm here and work.
A student has a B1, B2 visa and wants to apply for some work and travel program. Would her visa be
Different purposes. In this case, the B1, B2 tourist visa right now for Ukrainians, if it was issued in the last year and a half or so, is valid for 10 years. So if you have a visa that you just got last year, it's got 9 more years of validity. That means that you can travel as a tourist on it for the next 9 years. But like I said a minute ago, you're not able to work on that visa. That would be illegal. It would mean that you're violating that status, and that could get that visa canceled. But in terms of applying for summer work and travel, that's not going to lead to the cancellation of the B1, B2 visa. You just need to make sure that for the purposes of the program, in order to legally work, that you enter on that J1.
Yes.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes? Okay.
Cool.
Trickling in slowly.
Yes. Then, are there any differences in the requirements for a job? For example, a student working as a housekeeper at the hotel and other student working at the position of lifeguard. Should English level of lifeguard be higher?
Well, that actually is up to the employer. So the employer has a responsibility, the sponsor has the responsibility to evaluate your English, to make sure your English is at the right level for the job that you're going to be doing. When you come to us, we're making sure that your English is high enough to keep yourself safe in the United States and to work in general in the United States.
Yes.
So when you come to me, if you're coming to me and you're going for a lifeguard job, I don't really make you have better English than I would if you're going to be a housekeeper, or I don't let you have worse English if you're going to be a housekeeper. What's important to me is, can you keep yourself safe? Can you protect yourself? And can you do general work in the United States with the level of English you have?
Thank you, Sharon. So we have no more questions, and it seems like we don't have any more time.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone for your questions and your participation. We look forward to seeing you in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, if you have questions, please refer them to the information that I referenced earlier, provided on our website and on our Facebook page. And we'll see you all in the next couple of weeks. Good luck to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good luck. Bye.